Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And
full of coffee.
Full of
and nothing else.
You've been Matlock.
Java.
Yeah, like I said, when I get like that, if I don't eat and I have too much caffeine, I get jittery, but not like the TV jittery like that. Like it's just I can't focus on anything, and I feel like I'm like one breath away from having a heart attack at any given like.
Yeah, it's bad. No, I get that. I get that totally. I probably will die from this. But like I mean, I didn't have. When you're really busy at work, we were talking off air, like when you're really busy at work, like I have this thing where like I rarely eat much of a lunch anyway. I just don't have an appetite. And if I do eat, like I feel like I can't really work. So like I just had one of these coffee things, and then I got home, and then I had to I felt bad because my dogs were stuck in the house all day with nobody around. So I took them for a walk immediately, and then that took an hour. So, and then I came back and it was time to do the show. And it's like, I can't think of a better way. Like maybe cocaine to get through, but like right now I'm going to try this and see if a half measure will be enough.
If I start hearing you like sniffing all the time, I'll know that it didn't work. I'm sure you just have like a stash of emergency cocaine handy. You always come across as one of those kind of people.
Push a bookshelf aside and you'll see a treasure trove, my friend. So, yeah, this is a Non-Essential Podcast, episode 96, I think.
Yeah, I know. We might have to start talking about, like, what to do for episode 100. Like, cocaine, I guess.
Yeah. Just tell drug stories. But yeah, you know, we're at after 100. I feel like we don't have to keep count anymore, and that'll be cool.
We won't release like any regular schedule either. We'll just randomly, like 1 week we may have 4 episodes, and then you won't hear from us for a month and a half.
Yeah, that was the goal when we started this podcast, was to get far enough that we could stop doing the podcast. But yeah, so if you haven't listened to the show before, any non-essential podcast could be somebody's first. We tell each other stories. It's not really, there's no rule to what those stories can be. It just has to be something interesting, and usually the other person doesn't know what they're coming in with. So, yeah. And I went last week, so I'm done for now.
Yeah. And I'm going to kind of push our boundaries a little bit. Well, not really push the boundaries, but it falls squarely in this can be about anything, because it's a very non-essential podcast type story, but it's also not really like anything that we've covered so far. So, it may be short, but every time I think that my topics are short, it turns into like a 2-hour
Your last
episode.
one was supposed to be short, and it ended up turning into it was like a 10-minute story, but a half an hour of me whining about how boring I think UFOs are.
UFOs are, yeah.
And how I wish UFO people would make their stories more interesting.
Yeah. Well, this one, it's not about UFOs, so we're good to go there.
Damn, I thought you would keep trying.
Oh, I will. I'll revisit that well. So, on an otherwise ordinary day in 1379, while working near a French monastery, a Paranoid Mouet, I think that's how you pronounce it, it's French, of course.
Paranoid, no way.
No way.
That's a great
That's where the word
name
comes from, yeah. He was assaulted and murdered in front of a crowd of onlookers. During the hearing, the 3 individuals who had murdered the man...
Sorry, I just really heard in my voice no way.
No way. So, during the hearing, the 3 individuals who had murdered the man were found guilty and sentenced to death. But so were the onlookers, who prosecutors had argued that, at best, they were guilty of complacency. But at worst, they had actually...
Fight.
Yeah, Basically, yeah. They said that they had actually agitated the situation and kind of egged the killers on.
Sounds right.
Yeah. But if you think that punishment sounds too severe, you're not alone. Upon hearing of the conviction, the monastery wrote to the judge, arguing, they agreed with the sentence for the 3 that had actually had a hand in the murder, but imploring the court to go easy on the onlookers because their death would prove to put the monastery in such a tough financial spot that they might not recover. So it wasn't necessarily like we don't think this is fair. It's if you sentence all these people to death, it's going to hurt us.
Think about society.
So now would probably be a good time to mention that the crowd of onlookers, as well as the 3 murderers, were actually pigs. So
the sentence was really, this is how justice systems are now. There's always a fucking catch. This had nothing to do with murder and doing justice to the victim. This was about bacon, pork chop.
Bacon, it's bacon. I couldn't remember what the commercial was for anyway.
For fucking bacon?
Bacon.
Bacon strips?
Those bacon strips, yeah.
What's
and literally the catchphrase is bacon, it's bacon, and I couldn't remember it.
I just remember a dog running around screaming filet mignon.
Bacon, bitch! Give me some bacon! I think that's how it went.
That's the updated version. Give me some goddamn bacon.
It's like the Bush's Baked Bean commercials, but cranked up to 11. Anyway, so while I was browsing for topics for this week's show, I just happened to stumble upon a piece of information that's totally new to me, anyway. Maybe everybody else already knows this. But apparently, in Europe, it used to be customary to put animals on trial for human crimes. Which, of course, is absurd. Yet it's a practice that apparently went on for hundreds of years. It's not like, there was this one town in Europe that for 20 years was like, we're going to convict animals. Like, it was almost a span of 1,000 years that this went on.
Same rules apply in the next Pokemon game.
That'd be pretty sweet, actually. And of course,
Pokemon Dark Ages.
Dark Ages. Before I go on, just a heads up for those of you sensitive to the subject of animal cruelty. You've been warned that they're not going to be particularly nice to animals. Now, I don't go into like grizzly. It's not like, they drew and quartered this pig. But
just know this is a story about animals getting fucked over.
Sentenced to death, yeah. So in the case of Muette's murder, the judge agreed to forgive the sentence passed on to the onlooking pigs. It's so fucking absurd. A lot of sentences in this week's they're absurd sentences. But the 3 animals that had attacked the man were indeed executed. So if you're like me, you assume that just means like putting them down with like a gunshot or an injection or whatever.
Yeah.
But of course, that's not what this means. If you're going to try animals as if they are human and find them guilty of human crimes, I guess that means you have to fucking execute them as if they're human as well, which in the case of these pigs meant that they were probably hung.
Like, imagine being that judge. Like, we give judges like so much fucking prestige and status in our society, but it is an occupation descended from us being too stupid to, like, we're our dumbass attempt to create order. We're gonna put an asshole in a wig in a fucking robe and be like, here, you tell these animals that they're gonna hang. Yeah.
Right. Like, I actually get to it probably in the next paragraph. I'm probably screwing up my notes here, but or the order of my story. But yeah, like, it'd be one thing if it's like, oh, these are dangerous animals, and you were going to have a hearing to see should they be put down, because that happens today. If your dog bites somebody, you can be like told this dog has to be put down. And in that case, I would prefer it to go in front of some kind of official hearing where I could say, look, like this asshole trespassed on my property and was breaking into my house. I don't think my dog should be killed for this. Like, I would like that opportunity. That is not at all what we're talking about. I will put my dog
against his pig, and we'll see.
Right, that's the problem. Is that's not what we're talking about.
Trial by combat.
But so anyway, yeah, these pigs were probably hung. But the other thing that they did a lot was to burn them at the stake like witches, because of course also
that's gotta fucking be the most. Like, I don't
delicious smelling execution. Oh, no, that's not where you're going.
Wow, the squeals of breakfast. No, like that sound of like pigs dying is already like pretty horrific, and to do it in that way, it's like I don't think you need like a 21st century mindset about animals.
Yeah,
to be like, this is fucking unpleasant. This isn't right. Like,
and even if you're one of those monsters that doesn't think animals like deserve any kind like whatever, which then you're a fucking monster. I hate those people. But then from like a practicality standpoint, it's like, we're going to burn these pigs at the stake, completely ruining any chance of even using this meat.
Yeah.
It's like, what? I don't get it. So in 1906, author E.P. Evans published a book called The Criminal Prosecution and Capital Punishment of Animals. By then, thankfully, the practice had ceased, but this book was an examination back through actual court documents and case filings pertaining to animal crime.
Imagining this lawyer like, did you know your pig has rights? The Constitution says it does.
Have you or a loved one or a chicken been harmed by this in any way? Call the lawyers.
Did your cat crap on your neighbor's newspaper and you want representation? Call now for a free consultation.
So in Evans' book, he noted that crimes committed by pigs were the most common, type of crime, especially in cases of capital punishment.
Just like
which
now.
He attributed, right. Which he attributed to their sheer number. There's just a lot of pigs. That's like, what people ate. And the fact that they were often permitted to roam freely. And of course, due to their naturally boorish behavior. I added that one. I was proud of it.
But you shouldn't be.
Yeah, no.
You're going to get in big trouble.
There's not a whole lot in my life that I should be proud of, but
damn it, I nailed that one.
But if you know anything about pigs, I mean, it sounds dumb if you don't know it, but pigs are actually pretty dangerous animals. They can be aggressive, and they're big and
like I thought it was that movie. Fuck, what was it? It was the guy who did Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
I mean, I know that movie.
He made a movie. It had like Brad Pitt as like a gypsy boxer dude. But there was like a mobster in that movie who like would feed people to pigs, and he like broke down like how quickly a pig could eat like a human body and shit. And
that's the kind of thing you find out that factoid, and then you write an entire movie just to have that scene, like an excuse to have that scene.
Yeah, but it was also in Deadwood and shit.
I mean, fun fact, there's more people every year killed by pigs than sharks, but we're all afraid of sharks and not pigs. Go figure.
Well, I mean, pigs are basically sharks of land.
And that's the thing, that's part of the reason is that the humans have a lot more close contact with pigs than we do sharks.
At least like a shark is just a mouth of fucking razor blades, and it probably, it'd be violent, but it would slice you up pretty quick. At least you died
to a shark. It's kind of badass. Like, I don't want my obituary to include Steve was killed by pigs.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like a shark, getting you is like a bunch of saw blades. It'll probably take you out pretty quick. Like a pig, it will fucking gnaw on you and shit. And, and it's powerful enough to take you out, but I don't want my death to be munched on. I want to be. If I must be eaten, devour me, please.
Yeah, I think excuse me, I got to jot a note. I got an idea for my next creepypasta. But, So, yeah, like you were just saying, many of the pigs that were put to death were found guilty of chewing off people's ears or noses, which I don't know how you allow that to happen. The ear I could see because they could probably grab it and get it like pretty like swiftly, but your nose, like you'd think you'd see the pig coming, I guess. So I thought that was weird.
That's fetish shit.
Yeah.
You know. And at that point, you're at risk. You know you're risking it.
There were also many cases in which pigs had killed children who may or may not have deserved it. Evidence mentions one specific case in which a pig had killed and then eaten a child on a Friday.
The original Albert Fish.
Seems like a bad way to end your week, right? To get eaten by the pig. But
yeah, death would be, the ultimate bummer.
Yeah, the bad way to
the ultimate Sunday bummer.
Like if I'm gonna, we all have to die someday. I hope mine's on a Monday. Like, have to go back to work? No, you don't.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, the reason that they point out that it was on a Friday is apparently that somehow makes the crime worse because Friday was considered a sacred day. So I guess like killing a kid's pretty bad, but if you're going to do it, don't do it on a Friday because that's really bad.
Well, it's like in The Wire, they talked about like when gangs were at war, you didn't fight on a Sunday because that was a church day. If you did, then you were like breaking some ultimate breaking a rule, and people are like, "You're a motherfucker."
Now, in my mind, you're probably going to be sentenced to death for killing a kid regardless. So I don't really care if it's worse that it was on a Friday, but yeah. I'm sure the pig had its reasons. Animals were even found guilty and sentenced to execution for being victims of certain crimes, specifically, of course, bestiality. Though there are records of a donkey who, after being the victim of an unwanted sexual situation, had a local preacher come forward to testify that, and I seriously quote, he had known the animal for 4 years, and she had always proven to be virtuous and well-behaved, both at home and abroad. It's like, wait a fuck, how often are you taking your donkey abroad? Like, and it's weird that you like come forward and be like, I've known this donkey for 4 years, like,
and loved her for 3.
That's the thing, is that whole like testimony to save this donkey reads to me like the preacher was also having sex with this donkey. It's just like didn't want it to go away.
Yeah.
So
bestiality is a very hot take. Bestiality is very weird to me.
Yeah, it's very wrong. But it was also interesting to me reading this that it's like, oh well, in a case of bestiality, they would sentence the human to death. But they would also sentence the animal to death for like tempting the human to have sex with it. Like,
I mean, like, it's if you're, I guess a terrible rabbit hole to go down, but fucking an animal is clearly bad. I think we could all agree on that. But if you're just like giving your donkey a hand job, like,
and the donkey enjoys it, it's like, well, that's on the donkey.
Yeah. I don't think the donkey's like a victim there,
Well, and that's the weirdest thing is because it talks about how sometimes the court agreed that the animal was merely a victim and they didn't charge him, but other times they did. So it's like, was there witness testimony? Like, man, that pig really looked like he was enjoying it. We better put him to death too. Like, yeah.
I don't know. I'm just asking questions here,
There's a lot of questions to be asked.
Yeah.
This probably
not
shouldn't
all of them
be.
Do we need answers?
Well, this probably shouldn't be surprising by this point in the story, but it wasn't uncommon for an animal that had been sentenced to death to be dressed in human clothes, like pants and shirts and shit, prior to their public execution. Because why the hell not? Like, you're going to hang a pig, you better.
You can't kill him if he's wearing people clothes.
I'll tell you, this story this week, as I was like reading more and more of it, I've often said like we tend to look back at our ancestors like they were dumber than us. That's like, I mean, there's that whole alien built the pyramids because there's no way humans could have done it without our modern tools thing. And that always pissed me off because, you know, it's like our ancestors didn't have our knowledge, but they weren't dumb. But then I read this, it's like, well, fuck, our ancestors were pretty fucking dumb. Like,
well, what? I mean, it actually, how fucking smart do you have to be? Like, the pyramids are a bad example because the scale is what's impressive about pyramids. The structures themselves is like, you had a bunch of blocks and you made a fucking 3-dimensional triangle. Like,
that's true, yeah. But
and you put a fucking hole in there to bury your goddamn king, which is another sign that you're dumb. You have a fucking all-powerful ruler.
And that's just why, like, this is such a good non-essential podcast topic, is because, like I said, it makes me question. It's like, man, our ancestors were dumb. But then you sit here and you start thinking, it's like, are we any smarter today? And it's like, nah, I'm not really convinced of that either.
No.
So we're just dumb in different ways, but I don't know that we're any better. But yeah, so they would occasionally dress up these animals in humans' clothes to execute them, because I guess better make it a party if you're going to do it.
I'm just imagining some, like, fucking, you know, Lone Ranger ass fucking pig getting taken to the noose. And he sees his special pig gal one last time in the crowd. And then
tosses his hat to her.
And then fucking switch gets pulled. That'd be a good movie. just a fucking cowboy pig. And you play it completely straight. You know?
Or let's go remake the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but Jack Sparrow's an actual fucking sparrow now. Like, why not?
Cheaper than Johnny Depp.
So, like I said earlier, when it came to animal trials, this isn't just like an overly elaborate process for dealing with dangerous animals. Again, these were courses that went through the actual court, the same court that human crimes were tried in. So in front of the judge with real prosecutors and defense attorneys. So my point there is we're not just like saying, oh, is this a dangerous animal that for the good of society needs to be put down? It's like, nah, we're having actual trials. And that'll get more apparent.
That's what I mean, is like the whole fucking legal process is so fucking like at its fundamental core is just stupid absurdity.
Although it does kind of shed some light. We've had different topics in the past that have ended up, well, yours last week where the guy got out of the mental ward while muttering, I'm going to kill people, like as many people for every year I did in here. Like, yeah. So we've talked about how like bad the legal process has been and really still is. And this just sheds other light onto it. It's like, yeah, I mean, I guess if you put it in that way, they were hearing like, should this guy be let out into public? Next case, this cow shat on a lawn. Should we hang it? Like, I mean, wild times.
Do we have enough rope to hang it?
And, of course, we're not only talking about whether or not an animal should be executed or put down. Depending on the crime, animals could instead be sentenced to jail time in actual jails. So, it's like, hey, pig, you ate the neighbor's feed. We're going to send you to 30 days in county.
I feel like this is like, at first I thought they were just, you know, really bored, but now I think they genuinely think their lives were like a fucking Disney movie. Where all these animals had like personalities and shit.
You're right.
Like,
which really makes what they were doing to them even. So it's like, oh, you have human like intelligence or at least a human sense of moral, and you did wrong, and we're going to put you down. But even you over here that did right, we're going to eat you tomorrow. So
throwing like, a pig into a cell, being like, you think about what you did.
You did. So it was not uncommon when a home or a place became infested with, say, rats, for the court to evict them, writing them an actual order demanding that they leave the premises by a specific date and time. So,
what the fuck?
Again, I don't know where they were going with that. It's like, Judge, I've got rats in my house. Can we convict them?
That wouldn't work if there was like a homeless guy living in your wall. Like... Like,
Right. But we're going to go to trial for these rats. So, on at least one occasion, the apparently famed animal defense attorney Bartholomew Chassany, I'm probably saying the last name wrong, but he was able to get the rats' trial thrown out and therefore prevent said eviction by arguing that in order to try the animals, they would, of course, all have to actually appear in court because, you know, we do have law and order here. You can't try somebody without them being there to defend themselves. He then pointed out that the journey from where the rats were infesting to the courthouse was unreasonably long and a dangerous trip for these rats, especially since the city streets were swarming with hungry cats just waiting to pounce.
What?
So the judge agreed that they couldn't possibly hold a fair trial and agreed to not evict the rats, which at the end of the day doesn't make a bit of a difference.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, why are you, like, trying to weasel out, like, a legal technicality for something that's, like, going to be completely pointless and unsuccessful anyway?
Because he probably got $1 million payday for successfully defending the rats. From who, I don't know. Like, the rats maybe had a union. I don't know. But even swarms of insects could find themselves at the wrong end of a criminal complaint where, again, a judge would issue an order that they leave an area on or before a certain date and time. So if you're like me, the big question here is, what happens when the rats and insects don't fucking leave because they can't read your stupid legal order? So that's where this bit of information comes in. During this time, these courts were mostly run by the local churches, you know, rather than independent courts like we have today. So because of that, one of the worst punishments that they handed down, you know, other than like hanging and burning at the stake, was excommunication. Yep. So if the rats refused to leave a house after the official order, the judge would excommunicate them from the church, which everybody agreed was a terrible fate indeed. The rats and weevils and locusts and such probably didn't care that much.
Yeah, I was like, what are you going to do? Fucking brand them?
These people were literally like, ha, you've been cursed by God. Although, interestingly enough, as a Christian...
You may enjoy your house you've invaded, but you'll never have access to the kingdom of heaven.
Well, that's where I was going to go with that. Interestingly enough, most Christian faiths specifically don't believe that animals go to heaven anyway. So I'm not really sure what the goal of excommunication was, other than maybe some vague belief that God would like come down and smite them. Yeah, I don't know, but they were apparently all for it. I mean, they get really super fucking excited about excommunicating the rats in their house.
That's the thing. This is all just made up discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just... These are all made up punishments of like yeah. for crimes that haven't even happened. Like the best thing that ever happened was when people started committing real crimes. Because these guys were like, finally.
I was just about to say, and I don't have this in my notes, it's kind of a revelation that I just had, but I mean, we see it today where a lot of times our legal system and various arms of our legal system, for instance, the cops, really need crime to be this thing that is just rampant. Like, yeah. They want us to believe that if you walk outside and there's not a court system and there's not a cop, you're going to get gunned down, because that makes them super important, and which makes them more money.
Yeah,
and
like
gives them
it's
more
all
power.
like as a business, and it is a business. It's all about funding. So you have to be doing a good job with the numbers you're presenting, but have to make it clear that these numbers are a overwhelming threat to society, right. And it's just a bullshit manipulation for the fact that really, like in the case of police, you just got a bunch of assholes in cars who get bored. So they make fucking crimes right. up, and they show up and they escalate shit to make it way worse.
And it's certainly, I'm not arguing that real crime doesn't happen and there's not criminals, but yeah, it's pretty obvious that for a very long, basically probably for human history, the amount of crime being done has always been exaggerated for various reasons. Yeah. You know, a lot of times it was pinned on foreigners just as an excuse to be, you know, racist, or like we said, as an excuse to make the judges and the law enforcement branch and whatever more powerful. And I kind of wonder how much of that like plays into this, where they didn't have enough real crime to prosecute, so they're like, yeah,
well, we have to have a trial Monday, you know?
It's like,
I have a rat problem. Well, good enough. Let's do it.
My pig ate my 5-year-old. I'm just going to fucking shoot him. It's like, nope. In this country, we believe in due process.
And now this pig will have its time of day in court, and if it loses, you can be a part of the firing squad.
So at some point in the 18th century, everybody figured out just how stupid it was to put animals on trial, and the practice went away. But I just can't help it.
In the 18th century, they didn't realize how dumb it was to have a drummer at the front lines of a cannon fight.
Right. Like I said, the intelligence is relative here. It's this one thing they figured out was like, hey, wait a minute.
Like, I know if humanity makes it that long, like another 100 years from now, we're the dumbasses.
Yeah.
You know?
But
we might be the dumbasses that destroy the earth. And that will be fucking cool. Yeah. We pulled it off.
At least you said I wouldn't accomplish anything, Mom. Well, Take a look at this as the world burns.
Oh, you were trying pigs? How quaint. We were fucking boiling the planet.
So another thought that crossed my mind during the, writing up these notes is I couldn't help but think just what it must have felt like to be a person about to go on trial when you show up to the courthouse and have to wait for like a cow to be adjudicated first. Going to court is fucking miserable anyway. Anyone who has had jury duty can attest to that. But like, and that is a huge part of it, is just the waiting. Constant wait. Not just
you have to be there like fucking 3 hours early for a judge that's going to be a half an hour late. And and it's not just that, but I mean, like, I imagine it really doesn't fill you with a great sense of respect for the judicial system when you're having to hear a case about like some rowdy chickens. It's like, oh, I'm fucked. Like this court, like, that really points out, and it's probably people that were all into animal trials until they got charged with something. They're like, shit, these people decide my fate too? Well, damn it. So, and as an interesting aside, just about every article that I found on the topic mentions that probably the most bizarre case of animal capital punishment was a school of dolphins that were tried and found guilty and put to death in France in 1596. Unfortunately, though, there's records that this happened, but there's no records as to what the like dolphin crime was. Just being assholes.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, I think we've all heard about like dolphin trainers that get basically raped by dolphins, like. Yeah. But I imagine it was more like just some fisherman was like reeling in the fish of his life and a dolphin ate it.
Back in the 1500s, they wouldn't have done anything to like protect, women. If a dolphin had done something like that, the dolphin just probably did a fucking backflip and the guy got fucking self-conscious. Because he can't even fucking dog paddle.
Yeah, he was trying to show off for some girl that he liked, and the dolphin's over there doing flips, and he's like, "You son of a bitch!" You others are egging him on. I heard you do the stuff.
You cock blocking piece of shit. And then they get in a big fight, and next thing you know, they're all on trial.
So I do have a couple of my like come back down or like downer notes at the end of the story. Not a lot of actual evidence for these trials exists today. Most of it comes from like there's evidence out there, and that's why when you read about it, they say, "Oh, there's documents showing these cases," but most of them are actually talking about documents that were written in like the 19th century that don't cite what documents they're going from. So there are people that think that a lot of this. I mean, it did happen, but maybe not to the extent that like it sounds.
Jailing it happened at all, though, is like
right, exactly.
Like you're still fundamentally fucking stupid. Like,
I did mention that they would sentence animals to jail, and they did, but it was really more of a way to like a secondhand way to punish their owners because they would charge the farmer for like room and board. It's like, well, then just give him a fucking fine. Like,
all right.
But whatever.
No, you have to do really like fucking dramatic visitations with your pig. Just like it's only
conjugal visits.
It's only 2 more months. Just hang in there. And if a new pig comes in there, you got to fight him.
You'll make it through, and then Christmas will be here, and we're going to butcher you and eat you. But But at least you'll die a noble death in my belly. And then the last note I have is that rat trial I mentioned where the attorney got the rats off. I did come across one thing. I came across that story a lot of places, but I did find one source that says that story it's thought to have been made up just to like disparage that attorney. Like it was an actual attorney, but they think maybe like I don't say competitor, but like just somebody that didn't like him started passing the story around like this guy defends rats and this, can you believe the crazy shit that he said? So that may or may not be true too, but yeah, animal trials, at least to some extent, were a thing, and that's something I did not know, prior to this week.
And then we moved on to a more sophisticated time where we tried women as witches. Something believable.
Which was right about the same time, if you're looking at the timeline there. Like, maybe we should have kept trying animals because it would have spared... I don't know.
Well, those women should have known better and got some pigs. I
just can't imagine attending a trial for a pig, having him found guilty to be hung, then watching him be dressed in human clothes and attending the public execution. Putting a
blindfold on it as you walk it to the gallows.
And then going home and having any confidence that society at all has any chance of survival. Like, I don't...
Going home, like... Imagine being that executioner and going home and like do people have like the existential dread we have all the time? Like those doubts of like, do I serve any function? Is there any sense of purpose for me in the universe? And you're just you're the fucking pig killer.
Well, but now that brings me back to the conversation we had off air about when you work for much larger corporations, which we both do, things that come down the pipe that make no sense, but they never consulted anybody. So I'd like to think at some point the executioner was just an executioner and he probably liked his job. He showed up every day and did it. And then one day the judge is like, hey, by the way, here's a memo. We're going to start hanging pigs and stuff. And the executioner's like, and from that day forward, he just hated his life and his job, but he needed the paycheck, so he kept showing up.
Yeah.
But
or maybe it's like, the thing I think a lot of people kind of have to come to grips with is like, you're not necessarily like, the dream job is kind of a myth. And so maybe he was just like, hey, it's what I do. And then he goes home and is like, but my life is my family, And maybe they're the happiest fucking guys in the world.
If your whole career was hanging animals and like burning them at the stake, do you think you still get that like 1,000-yard stare? Like,
so you've seen some
shit? As an executioner,
I think I'd be even colder and more fucked up. Because somewhere in your heart of hearts, this is fucking wrong. Like, pig doesn't fucking know shit about fuck.
But you also kind of know you'd have that because you live in a time period where if you spoke up, you're like, I think it's kind of dumb that we're hanging pigs. They'd be like, oh, we got to hang you now.
You're one of them.
You're questioning society. Like,
on the charge of wearing a human suit but being a pig underneath, we find you guilty.
Sorry, you fucked a pig. We didn't fuck. We made love. It's different.
Again, not to dwell on this. I'm just saying, hand stuff, mouth stuff. Where's the line? If you're doing it, if you are a giver, is bestiality more okay than if you're trying to take from the animal?
Well, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why I care this much about a bestiality technicality.
I think what you should do, not just your homework as a listener, is to call up your local, like, judge or your court system and just ask them, like, is the punishment worse if you have sex with an animal or the animal has sex with you? Like, is it the same? Just ask them and see how quickly law enforcement shows up to your door.
And I'm not saying I will, but if I jack off a billy goat, is there like a statute of limitations, or do I need to be worried?
I live in Ohio. We're an agricultural hot spot or whatever. Here's a tip. If you want to give a hand job to an animal, just catch it in a vial and call it science. Like,
experiment on it. Get Billy Goat's superpowers.
So yeah, that's my story. Animal trials. They were a thing, I guess. Like
animal trials and bestiality.
It's not what I set out to find when I was looking for a topic, but it was one that I instantly fell in love with. 'Cause
yeah, it's core to the essential idea of like the non-essential podcast is like a lot of humanity failure tends to be the theme of this show, if there's any consistent one.
And like I said, if you look real close, it's like, because it's easy to sit back and I do it, where it's like, look how dumb they were. And then you're like, wait, shit, it hasn't changed. Like,
meanwhile, people are entering bars that say mask required and then taking off their mask to drink a beer.
My rights are being stepped on. Let's take it to court. I mean, if you follow the Supreme Court at all, some of those cases that come down, you're like, what the fuck are they doing? Like,
yeah. Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean is like, we laugh at it, but the core idea of this fucking justice system and most justice systems are just as stupid. And they're so fucking procedure driven that like there's no humanity behind it. It's just a bunch of assholes on autopilot.
And the thing is, we tend to view it, it's easy to sit back and view it as like some official, like sacred, like, because justice is important. I think it is to a society. But when you really think about it, the only reason that we have something like the Supreme Court or even our state courts or local courts is because if you've ever been in a room of more than like two people or even two people, you can never get people to agree on anything. So we needed a way to like settle those disagreements. So basically the court system is just like our disagreements have not gotten any smarter. They're still stupid things that were, but we've made it official. We put robes on it and said, here you go, it's court.
Yeah.
But
I was slightly off topic, but like I think what's really bad about it isn't the process. It's what I said before, the status of people in the court system. And I think judges should make minimum wage.
Well, there certainly shouldn't be lifetime appointment.
Yeah, and I think, well, how many people would want that job? Like, and same thing with politicians and shit too. If you were capped at minimum wage, would you do that job? And if your answer is no, then you shouldn't fucking have that job because
that's really the
corruptible.
Greatest way to get them to raise minimum wage finally, though.
That's true. It would be $35 an hour.
At least.
At least.
But anyway, so that's all I got. I'm done.
Right. Yeah, well, we're done then. Fuck it.
Court is adjourned.